What's up, y'all? I've gotten a ton of questions about JJK 258, so let's just dive straight in. But spoiler warning, obviously. All right, so to kick things off here, we've got a few questions about that domain expansion. So shout out to Matthew, Malik, Wakandan Buttermilk, and Ordinary Potato for these. And I'm going to talk about these first three all together because they're kind of touching on the same thing, and then we'll talk about potatoes down there. But pause and read these if you'd like. But they're basically asking, like, what was that domain? We know it was thrown together with duct tape and scraps, but did it look different from the Malevolent Shrine we're used to because of that? Or did it look different because it maybe is like the truest form of Sukuna's domain? And unfortunately, we just do not have enough information to know the answer to that. I think it certainly makes sense that it maybe looks that way because it was thrown together, and something I've even alluded to in my previous videos talking about this chapter so far is that the spine of this domain reminds me of the spine from Megami's incomplete domain. So is that just an aesthetic coincidence, or could that be a clue that perhaps one of the binding vows Sukuna used to manifest this thing was sacrificing part of the 10 shadows or something? I don't know. And like what Condon mentions, it does look like some pieces of that shrine resemble some of the Shikigami. But that's not to say that like the curse technique imbued or anything was 10 shadows, because I just want to be clear, because there were fake leaks that said Sukuna was using the 10 shadows, but those weren't real. So all I and Wakanda and Matthew are saying is just that could the 10 shadows have been sacrificed to even be able to use the domain? And I certainly think that's possible. But again, it could just be that the domain we're seeing is closest to the true form of Sukuna's domain that maybe we didn't see previously because he wasn't fully incarnated in his true form, or maybe there's stages to it, because the original shrine did look like it had mouths everywhere, right? So maybe there is a like beast within the shrine that is emerging or something. Ultimately, it could be a whole number of things, and we're just going to need some more information. But for now, I think maybe kind of both things could be true. And next up, we got this one from Ordinary, who has a theory that Sukuna maybe consumed part of Gojo's arm that Maharaga had sliced off in order to copy the one-handed domain sign that he did. And I certainly think that he copied the domain sign, like he learned that from Gojo. But I'm not sold on the fact that that means he consumed his arm. If you guys, have followed some of my theories, you know that I do think Sukuna could perhaps consume people to like steal things from them. So I like the idea, but at least that panel, I don't think the way that panel was choreographed, if you will. Sukuna was like standing on the opposite side of Gojo, and Gojo's arm would have flown behind himself, Gojo. So where Sukuna was standing, there didn't seem to be any like indication that he's like moved over there and grabbed the arm or anything. Now, could it have happened completely off panel at maybe a different moment or something? Sure. But for my money, the Sukuna consuming things would be more about like stealing techniques or something to that extent, and less so something like a hand sign. Like if he used the limitless or something, then I would be far more inclined to believe he had taken a bite out of that arm. But I think he could just probably copy the hand sign itself, just because Sukuna is such a genius at jujutsu. But this is a really cool idea, and who knows, it could be exactly what happened. Next up, we got some questions about the fire arrow, starting with this one from Guitar Hero. And he actually asked me this before the chapter came out, asking if the arrow could be the reversal of cleave and dismantle. And this has been a popular theory. But as we found out in the chapter, it's not a reversal, it's just simply part of the shrine. And skipping down to the bottom question here really quick, because it's on the same train of thought, Louis says this chapter should be confirmation that Sukuna's fire arrow is not related to RCT, because Sukuna presumably can't use RCT still because of Yuji's black flashes, or else he would have healed his limbs. So yeah, I'm on board with you here. This seems to be another piece of confirmation that the fire arrow is just another part of Shrine and not the reversal of it. So Louis also then poses, what would the reversal be? Like, do I think we'll see it? Yeah, I have no idea what it would be, but maybe it is some form of like creation, not creation like Yorozu or Mai, but like considering, cooking things up, you're preparing them, breaking them down. Maybe the reversal could be some form of like putting back together. It would be really cool to see the reversal of it, but given how like Gege has given us so few reversals, I'm not holding my breath to see it. And then to cycle back up to Knight Akuma's question here, he wants to know if the fire arrow could be Uruume's technique. And what we've seen them normally use with the ice would be the reversal of it. And this has been a popular idea I've seen thrown around as well. But again, given what we found out this chapter, I'm less inclined to think this because it just seems as if the fire arrow is just a facet of Shrine. Again, there seems to be a cooking theme, right? The knives cutting things up, the fire cooking it, and maybe other portions as well. But again, I do believe there's a consumption portion, and that may lead to Sukuna being able to take in other attributes. Next up, we got this question from Jeremy, and he wants to know, why is Uruume referred to as they? And I just refer to Uruume as they because that's how Gege does it, the author. He has never used gendered pronouns for Uruume. There have sometimes been some in the English version, but shout out to John Weary, that's incorrect. Gege has never used gendered pronouns, and even in the fan book and in interviews, Gege refers to Uruume as they. So I'm just following the author's lead. Next up, I've got this question from Julio, and I'm going to move out of the way since this is a long one for anybody that wants to pause and read it. But Julio is basically talking about how Megami, being the one in control of the merger, do I think he has the potential to like kind of hijack this? And I certainly do. I think that's kind of the most interesting angle we have here. Now, whether it'll like ultimately come to that or not, I don't know. But I think very specifically, Gege plotted it out this way to give us that potential, right? Megami is the one that has the authority to do this, and we know as it stands currently, Megami has given up, right? So could it, be possible that either he will do this in like a dark sense and just like completely given up on the world, or could it be a like savior type of moment where he can somehow, hijack it, for lack of a better word, and, help the heroes in some way by making it, less volatile or whatever the case may be, right? You could go an infinite number of ways. But yes, I think that is definitely on the table. And what I think is interesting is, will Yuji be able to get through to Megami and be able to do something about this? I think that's like the most interesting thing here, right? And I made a video like a while back comparing Gojo and Geto to Yuji and Megami and how Gojo couldn't save Geto. I think Yuji will be able to save Megami. He'll be able to get through to him, but it's at what point is that going to happen, and what's going to happen with the merger before that happens. So I don't have any like concrete guesses to give you, but that's definitely one of the main things I'm keeping an eye on because I think it's, one of the most interesting elements we have to explore still. And then speaking of Yuji saving Megami, we have this question from GCG who wants to know if Yuji's domain could be the key. And I hadn't thought about this, so this is a really cool idea. In recent videos, we have talked about the benevolent shrine idea, which I do think in theory is what's going to happen with Yuji, that, since he has the shrine curse technique, if he pops the domain, it will be kind of the benevolent shrine, but how exactly will that function? And I think that being a way that he could ultimately get through to Megami would be really cool, given just the shrine element, the poetic kind of symmetry with Sukuna, and then also, his unique soul abilities. Like if his slashes or whatever he imbues in the domain is able to like cleave Sukuna free of Megami, I think that would be a really cool idea. So yeah, I love this. Then on that same subject, we have this question from Riley on, could Ui Ui maybe swap the souls of Megami and Yuji and put Yuji back with Sukuna to be a prison for him? And I do think this is possible. Plus, we did get some clarity on the translations. Ui Ui can teleport each person twice. So he can use the technique more. It's just like on a per person basis. So he could theoretically do this if Yuji still had one of his available, which I don't know that he does, but let's just assume that he does. The biggest thing then is we need consent. And Megami, like being, rock bottom, having given up right now, I don't know that he'd consent to that, especially considering he'd be condemning Yuji, which I don't know if he would do that at this point. But it seems like it's on the table for, potentially being a way to kind of fix the Megami problem. And finally, we have this question from Ball. Y'all feel free to pause and read the whole thing, but it's about that comment from Kinjaku where he says, as long as Yuji and Sukuna are alive, the chain of curses will never end. So I don't believe that's speaking literally to like the existence of curses like placed upon people, meaning like if Yuji and Sukuna pass away, curses will cease to exist. I don't think so. I think it's more so speaking to the fact that Yuji and Sukuna's fates are tied. And, if Yuji is used to remove Sukuna from the planet, Yuji also is going to be removed, right? But I do think on like a narrative sense that Yuji will be the one to solve Megami's curse.